Welcome back, Queens. Have you ever noticed how some men only realize the value of something once it's gone? A man holds something rare, something priceless, but because he sees it every day, he stops noticing. He assumes it will always be there, so he neglects it. He takes it for granted. He thinks he can walk away, come back whenever he pleases, and it will still be waiting. But what happens when that rare thing is no longer his to claim? What happens when the door he carelessly walked through locks behind him forever? Marcus Aurelius once said, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." And what does that say about the man who took you for granted? He had a love so deep, so rare, so unwavering, yet he treated it like it was replaceable, like you were just another woman who would always be around, no matter how little effort he put in. But here's what he failed to realize. Love is not a guarantee. Respect is not an entitlement. And a woman who has been undervalued for too long does not stay where she is not cherished. Right now, he thinks he has time. He believes he can neglect you today and win you back tomorrow. He believes that no matter what he does, you will always be waiting. But what he doesn't know, what he will soon learn the hard way, is that nothing stings more than realizing you've lost something irreplaceable. And once he feels that loss, once he wakes up and sees the empty space where your presence used to be, that's when the punishment begins. Not through words, not through anger, but through something far more powerful, your absence. Imagine a man holding a flame in his hands. At first, he is mesmerized by its glow, warmed by its heat. But over time, he forgets its power. He stops appreciating it, stops tending to it, and assumes it will burn forever on its own. So, he turns his back. And what happens? The flame fades, the warmth disappears, and suddenly he is left in the cold, reaching for a fire that no longer burns for him. That is exactly what happens when a man takes a woman for granted. He assumes her love will never change. He believes she will always be there, waiting for him to realize her worth. But love, like fire, must be nurtured. And once it goes cold, there is no bringing it back. He had your loyalty, your devotion, your love. He had a woman who stood by him, believed in him, gave him everything without hesitation. And yet, instead of holding on to that with both hands, he let it slip through his fingers. He thought you were unbreakable. He thought no matter what he did, you would always choose him. But now he is about to learn the hardest truth of all. A woman who has been taken for granted does not stay. She rises. She evolves. She becomes untouchable. This is where the shift happens. This is where you stop waiting for him to appreciate you. This is where you stop questioning your worth based on his blindness, because you are not an option. You are not replaceable. You are not something he can put on a shelf and reach for whenever he pleases. And the moment you step into that truth, the moment you decide that you will never again be taken for granted, everything changes. He expects you to react. He expects anger, tears, a desperate attempt to make him see what he lost. But you are not giving him what he expects. You are giving him something far worse: indifference, detachment, the realization that you no longer care. And that is a pain no words could ever deliver. Because the truth is, he will miss you. He will compare every woman to you. He will wonder why nothing feels the same. He will search for you in the voices of others, in their touch, in their love, and he will come up empty. He will replay every moment, every memory, every time you chose him, even when he didn't deserve you. And he will ask himself the question that will haunt him for the rest of his life: why did I let her go? But by then, it will be too late. Because you are no longer the woman he once knew. You have stepped into your power. You have embraced your worth. You have become something far beyond his reach. You do not beg. You do not chase. You do not wait. You reign. And that, queens, is the most powerful lesson of all. He had you, and he took you for granted. Now, let him live with that mistake. Number 1. He held gold, but treated it like dust. Now, let him watch it shine without him. Have you ever watched someone hold gold in his hands and treat it like it was nothing? Have you ever seen a man look at something priceless, something rare, and toss it aside like it was just another rock on the ground? That's exactly what he did to you. He had something extraordinary. He had a love that was deep, loyal, and irreplaceable. And instead of holding it close, instead of cherishing it, he overlooked it. He took it for granted. He treated you like dust, something ordinary, something that would always be there no matter how little he valued it. But now, let him watch from a distance as the gold he once held shines brighter than ever, without him. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," and for too long you let his carelessness shape the way you saw yourself. You questioned your worth. You wondered if you were the problem. You thought maybe if you loved him harder, gave more, stayed longer, he would finally see you for what you are, a rare, once-in-a-lifetime kind of woman. But here's the truth. A man who cannot see the value of gold when it's in his hands does not deserve another chance to hold it. Right now, he thinks he still has control. He believes that no matter how he treated you, no matter how much he neglected you, you will still be there, waiting, hoping, believing in his potential. But that is where his mistake begins. Because a woman who has been undervalued for too long does not stay where she is not appreciated. She rises, she transforms, she becomes untouchable. And when he finally opens his eyes and realizes what he lost, he will see something that will haunt him forever. You shining, glowing, thriving, in a life where he is nothing more than a fading memory. Think of a jeweler who holds a raw diamond in his hands. At first, it looks like an ordinary stone, rough and unpolished. He does not recognize its true worth, so he tosses it aside, thinking it has no value. But then another jeweler comes along, one with vision, one who understands the worth of what he's holding. He polishes it, refines it, places it in a setting so grand that it becomes the centerpiece of the most beautiful crown. And the first jeweler. He watches from afar, filled with regret, knowing he had something priceless, but he was too blind to see it. That is exactly what is about to happen to him. He will watch you rise, and he will realize that the dust he treated you like was actually gold. Gold he can never touch again. This is the moment where everything shifts. This is where you stop mourning, stop waiting, stop hoping he will wake up and see your worth. Because your worth was never something he was meant to define. You define it. And from this moment forward, you will carry yourself as the rare treasure you are. No more proving yourself to a man who was too blind to see. No more waiting for validation from someone who never deserved your presence in the first place. You are done being taken for granted. You are done being overlooked. You are done being the woman who settles. He will look back. He will remember the way you loved him, the way you stood by him, the way you gave him everything without hesitation. And when he finally realizes that no other woman will ever match the depth of your love, the strength of your presence, the beauty of your heart, it will be too late. Because you are no longer in the place where he left you. You have risen so high that he can only watch from below. Queens, hear this truth. You are not ordinary. You were never ordinary. You were gold all along. And now it's time to shine so brightly that the man who took you for granted is blinded by your brilliance. Write this in the comments and claim it. I was gold all along, and now I shine without him. Let the world know that you are done waiting, done proving, done holding yourself back for a man who never saw your worth. And if this message lit a fire inside you, if it reminded you of the power you have always had, like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are here, working hard to bring you life-changing lessons, because you were never meant to be ignored. You were meant to shine. Number 2. He got used to the sun and forgot its warmth. Now let him freeze in the cold. Have you ever noticed how people stop appreciating the things they believe will never leave? A man stands under the sun every day, enjoying its warmth, feeling its light on his skin, but over time, he forgets how much he needs it. He stops looking up. He stops feeling grateful. He assumes it will always rise for him, always shine just as bright, no matter how little he acknowledges it. But then, one day, the sun no longer shines for him. The warmth disappears. The sky turns cold, and suddenly he realizes he never truly understood its value until it was gone. This is exactly what happened when he took you for granted. He had your love, your presence, your loyalty. He knew you were there, shining, giving, warming his life in ways he didn't even bother to notice. He assumed you would always be there, no matter how much he neglected you, no matter how much effort he stopped putting in. He believed you would keep shining, no matter how cold he became. But he was wrong, because the moment a woman realizes she's being taken for granted, everything changes. And now he's about to feel what happens when the sun he ignored disappears from his sky. Seneca once said, "Nothing is more honorable than a heart that gives, and nothing is more foolish than the one who takes it for granted." That's exactly what he did. He acted like your love was something ordinary, something expected, something that would always be there, no matter how little he gave in return. But love is not an endless supply. Love is not a constant that exists without effort. Love, like the sun, is a gift. And once that gift is no longer given, once that light is no longer shining, the cold that replaces it is unbearable. He thought he could ignore your needs, forget to cherish you, and still wake up every day with you standing by his side. But now, let him feel the absence. Let him sit in the dark, realizing that the warmth he took for granted is never coming back. Let him compare every woman to you, searching for the same glow, the same presence, the same irreplaceable light, only to find that once a queen stops shining for a man, she never does again. Imagine a man lost in a winter storm. He had the chance to stay by the fire, to protect it, to keep it burning, but he walked away, convinced that he could always return when he was ready. Now he's standing in the cold, shivering, reaching out for a warmth that no longer exists. That is the reality he will face. The moment he realizes that no matter how much he regrets it, no matter how much he wishes he could turn back time, you are already gone. And queens, that is where your power begins. This is not about revenge. This is not about proving your worth to him. This is about showing yourself that you were never meant to beg for love, to wait in the shadows, to stay where you were not cherished. This is your time to rise, to shine brighter than ever, not for him, but for yourself. Because the sun does not chase those who turn away from it. The sun does not lower itself to be noticed. The sun rises and it shines, with or without him. And when he finally realizes what he lost, when he feels the cold creeping in, when he looks around and sees nothing but the emptiness of his own choices, he will remember the warmth he once had. He will remember the way your love felt like home. But by then, he will be nothing more than a man standing in the dark, longing for a sunrise that will never come for him again. Queens, write this in the comments and claim it. He took my light for granted. Now let him live in the cold. Let the world know that you are done waiting, done proving, done hoping for a man who only realized your worth when it was too late. And if this message reminded you of the fire that still burns within you, like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are here to bring you the truth, the power, and the lessons that will set you free. Because you were never meant to beg. You were meant to reign. Number 3. He thought you were a flower that would stay in his garden. Now show him you were the wind that cannot be contained. He thought you were a flower, soft, delicate, rooted in place, waiting for his touch, dependent on his care. He believed that no matter how little he watered you, no matter how often he walked past without noticing your beauty, you would still bloom for him. He assumed that no matter how harsh the seasons got, you would stay, patiently growing in the same place, hoping for his attention. But what he failed to realize is that you were never just a flower in his garden. You were the wind, wild, untamed, unstoppable. And now it's time for him to see that no matter how much he reaches for you, he will never be able to hold you again. Marcus Aurelius once said, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." And that is where your power begins. He thought he controlled your place in his life. He thought he could neglect you, take you for granted, and you would still remain. But what he didn't see coming was your transformation. The moment you realized that your worth was never in being planted where he wanted you. Your worth was in your ability to rise, to move, to be free from the hands that never truly cherished you. Right now, he believes he has time. He assumes that just because you stayed before, you will always stay. He believes that even if he ignores you, even if he chooses others, even if he fails to appreciate you, you will always be there, waiting for him to finally open his eyes. But here's what he doesn't know. Your patience was not a weakness. Your loyalty was not an obligation. And now you are done waiting. Imagine a bird sitting on a branch. It trusts the branch, believing it will always be strong, always be there to hold it. But what happens when the branch starts to crack? The bird does not beg the branch to stay strong. It does not cling, hoping the branch will change. It spreads its wings and flies, and once it takes off, it never looks back. That is you now. He thought he was your foundation. He thought he could bend you, break you, neglect you. But now, he is about to learn what happens when a woman who was once patient finally decides to fly. He expected you to fight for him, to prove yourself, to stay even when you were suffering. But what he will feel now is the emptiness left behind when a woman who gave everything suddenly gives nothing. He will look around and wonder where you went. He will reach for you, only to feel the wind pass through his fingers, impossible to grasp, impossible to bring back. And that, queens, is the lesson he will never forget. This is where you step into your power. You are no longer the woman who waits for his recognition. You are no longer the woman who bends herself to fit into his world. You are no longer the woman who hopes that one day he will wake up and see your worth. Because you see it now. And when a woman realizes her own worth, nothing can keep her in a place where she is not cherished. He will regret this. He will remember the way you loved him, the way you stood by him, the way you gave him chances even when he didn't deserve them. He will think about the warmth in your touch, the way you understood him, the way you made him feel like he was home. And when he finally realizes what he had, it will be too late. Because by then, you will have moved beyond his reach, beyond his regrets, beyond his desperate thoughts of, what if? Queens, this is not your ending. This is your beginning. The moment where you stop being a flower in his forgotten garden and start being the force of nature you were always meant to be. The moment you stop waiting and start becoming. The moment you rise so high that when he looks for you, all he will see is the empty space where you used to be. Write this in the comments and claim it. I am not a flower to be picked. I am the wind that cannot be contained. Let the world know that from this moment on, you are done waiting, done proving, done being an afterthought in a man's life. And if this message reminded you of the power that has always been inside you, like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are here to remind you that you were never meant to be small, never meant to be controlled, never meant to be a background character in someone else's story. You were meant to reign, and now, it's your time. Number 4. He assumed your heart was his safe haven. Now let him drown in the storm of his own choices. Have you ever noticed how a man will treat something as permanent simply because he assumes it will never leave? He sees your love as a safe haven, a place he can always return to, no matter how far he strays. He believes no matter how much he neglects you, ignores your worth, or chooses everything else over you, you will always be there, waiting with open arms. But what happens when the safe haven he took for granted disappears? What happens when he looks back and realizes the shelter he once had is now gone, and all that remains is the storm of his own choices? Rumi once said, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." And queens, this is the moment you realize that his neglect, his indifference, and his carelessness were never a reflection of your worth. They were only a test, one that he failed. Because love is not something to be tossed aside, only to be picked up again when it's convenient. Love is not a shelter for a man who never learned how to appreciate its warmth. And now? Now, he is about to feel what it's like to stand outside in the cold, knowing he can never step inside again. He thought he had time. He thought he could take you for granted, and you would always be there, waiting for him to recognize your worth. He believed your love was unconditional, that your patience had no limits, that no matter what he did, you would always be the woman who stayed. But that was his mistake. Because love does not mean endless forgiveness. It does not mean being an option. And now, the woman he assumed would always be his safety is no longer there to protect him from the storm he created. Imagine a man who owns a beautiful house, a home filled with warmth, light, and love. He walks in and out without thought, leaves the doors open, lets the walls crack, and never repairs the damage. He assumes that no matter how much he neglects it, it will stand strong for him forever. But then, one day, a storm comes. The walls he never reinforced start to break. The roof he ignored starts to crumble. And when he finally realizes that he needs his home, it's already too late. It's gone, and there is nothing left but the wreckage of his own making. That is exactly what happens when a man takes your love for granted. He will wake up too late, realizing that the place he once called home no longer exists for him. Queens, this is where everything changes, because now you stop waiting. Now you stop holding the door open for a man who never knew how to treat your heart with care. Now you take back your power, not by proving your worth to him, but by showing him that you are no longer a place he can return to. He will try. Oh, he will try. He will feel the emptiness of your absence. He will regret the way he overlooked you. He will realize that no matter who he meets, no one will ever make him feel the way you did. But by then, you will have already built a new life, one where he no longer belongs. And here's the truth he will never be able to escape. He thought he had a safe place in you, but now he must stand alone in the storm of his own choices. He will search for shelter in the arms of another, but he will never find the warmth you gave so freely. He will hear echoes of your love in every empty space, feel the weight of your silence in every quiet moment. And when he finally understands that he lost the only woman who truly loved him, that is the moment his punishment begins. But you are not the woman who waits. You are not the woman who stands at the door, hoping he realizes his mistake. You are the woman who rises, who builds, who moves forward without hesitation. He left you thinking he could always return, but now the only thing left for him is the cold reality that the door is shut forever. Queens, this is your moment. The moment you step into your power and never look back. The moment you stop being a safe haven for a man who didn't know how to protect what he had. The moment you walk away, not in anger, but in complete indifference. Because there is nothing more powerful than a woman who has finally realized that she was never meant to be a resting place for a man who was never ready to stay. Write this in the comments and claim it. I was his safe haven, but now I am the storm he cannot escape. Let the world know that from this moment forward, you are done being taken for granted. You are done being a second thought. You are done being a backup plan. Number 5. He let the flame die. Now let him shiver in the darkness. Have you ever watched a fire slowly die out? At first it burns bright, full of warmth and light, spreading its heat to everything around it. But the moment it is neglected, the moment it is no longer fed, it begins to fade. The glow dims, the warmth disappears, and all that remains is cold, empty darkness. That is exactly what happened when he took you for granted. He thought your love would burn for him forever, that no matter how little he gave, no matter how many times he ignored you, your fire would always be there, waiting for him to return. But now let him stand in the cold and feel what he lost. He had something rare, a woman who loved deeply, who gave selflessly, who stood by him even when he didn't deserve it. He had a fire that could have warmed him for a lifetime, yet he let it go out. And now, let him shiver in the emptiness of his own choices. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What we do now echoes in eternity," and his actions, they will echo back to him in the silence of the night when he realizes that the warmth he once had is gone forever. Right now, he may think nothing has changed. He may believe that he can come back whenever he pleases, that your love will always be waiting like a fire he can reignite at will. But what he doesn't see, what he refuses to understand, is that when a fire dies, it does not return. Once the warmth is gone, it is gone forever. And by the time he realizes this, you will have already moved on, burning brighter than ever, but not for him. Think of a man standing outside on a freezing night. He had a fire, but he let it go out. He thought it would always be there, always waiting for him to remember it mattered. But now, as the cold bites his skin, as the silence surrounds him, as he looks back at the place where the fire once was, he finally understands. He was the one who let it die. And no matter how much he wishes he could turn back time, no matter how many nights he spends regretting, the fire does not return for him. It finds a new home, a new place to burn, a new reason to shine. This is where your power begins. This is where you stop waiting, stop wondering, Stop giving chances to a man who never saw your worth. You were never meant to be someone's afterthought. You were never meant to be a fire that warms a man who refuses to cherish it. The moment you decide that you will no longer burn for someone who took you for granted, you step into a power that is unstoppable. He will feel the difference. The absence of your warmth will haunt him. He will try to find it in others, try to replace it, try to convince himself that what he lost wasn't that special, but deep down, he will know the truth. He let something extraordinary slip through his fingers, and now all he can do is stand in the cold, watching from afar as you rise, as you shine, as you glow in a way that no longer has anything to do with him. Queens, this is your moment. The moment you take back everything you once gave so freely. The moment you decide that the fire within you will never again be wasted on a man who didn't know how to keep it alive. The moment you realize that his regret is not your burden to carry. You are not his warmth anymore. You are not his safe place. You are the fire that no longer burns for him. Number 6. He thought you were his shadow. Now show him you were the light. Have you ever noticed how people only appreciate the light when they are lost in the dark? He thought you would always be there, standing in his shadow, waiting for him to turn around and finally notice you. He assumed you would follow his lead, dimming your own brilliance so he could shine. But he made one fatal mistake. He forgot that the light is never behind, it leads the way. And now it's time for you to show him what happens when the woman he overlooked stops waiting and starts rising. Seneca once said, "The greatest revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that is exactly how you will punish him, not by anger, not by words, but by becoming something so radiant, so untouchable, that he has no choice but to see what he lost. He believed he could take you for granted, that your love, your patience, your presence was something he could turn to when it suited him. He thought he could keep you in the background while he chased temporary distractions. But love is not a shadow, and you were never meant to live in his. Think of the moon. For years it revolves around the earth, reflecting the light of the sun, giving and giving, never asking for anything in return. But the moment the sun turns away, the night is left in complete darkness. That is what is about to happen to him. He will turn around one day, expecting you to still be there, only to find emptiness where your warmth used to be. Let him feel that void. Let him realize that without you there is no glow, no guidance, no one to light his way. He thought you were a shadow, silent, predictable, always present. But now you will show him that you were the light that made his world feel whole. You will rise, not to prove anything to him, but because you were never meant to be behind him in the first place. He will look at the woman you are becoming, stronger, wiser, glowing in ways he never expected, and it will hit him like a storm. He did not just lose a woman, he lost his guiding light. But queens, hear this. This is not about him anymore. This is about you. This is about stepping into the power that was always inside you, the power that was never meant to be hidden behind a man who could not recognize its worth. You are not his shadow. You are not something to be overlooked. You are the force that will blind him with regret. He thought you would wait. He thought you would keep chasing, keep proving, keep hoping. But now you will leave him behind in the darkness of his own choices, because the brightest stars do not beg for attention. They shine. And queens, that is exactly what you were meant to do. Number 7. He laughed when you stayed. Now let him cry when you walk away. Have you ever noticed how a man never appreciates what he has until it's gone? How he can sit there, watching you give your all, and yet treat your love like it's something ordinary. He takes and takes, never stopping to think that one day you might stop giving. He sees your loyalty, your patience, your devotion, and instead of valuing it, he laughs. He thinks you will never leave. He assumes you will always stay, always love him, always fight for him, no matter how many times he pushes you away. But here's where he is wrong. Love is not a chain. It is not a prison. And when a woman finally realizes her worth, she does not stay where she is not cherished. She walks away. And when she does, she never looks back. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And right now, his thoughts are filled with arrogance. He believes he can do whatever he wants, and you will still be there. He believes he can ignore you, neglect you, push you aside, and still have your love waiting for him like a foolproof safety net. But what happens when that net disappears? What happens when he turns around and sees nothing but emptiness where you used to stand? That is the moment the laughter stops. That is the moment the regret begins. Right now, he thinks he is winning. He thinks he has the power because you stayed despite the pain, because you kept giving even when he stopped deserving it. But love does not exist to be taken for granted. A woman's heart is not a game to be played. And once she learns that, once she decides that she will never again settle for half love, for empty promises, for being treated like an afterthought, she walks away, and suddenly he is the one left behind. Imagine a man standing in the middle of a desert holding a bottle of water. At first, he takes small sips, enjoying it, but over time, he stops noticing it. He leaves the bottle open, lets the water spill out, believing there will always be more. He is careless. He is reckless. And then, one day when the heat becomes unbearable, when his throat burns with thirst, he reaches for that bottle, only to find it empty. That is exactly how he will feel when he realizes that the love he once took for granted is no longer his to claim. He laughed when you stayed, but he will cry when you walk away. He will cry when he sees you thriving, glowing, rising higher than ever before. Without him, he will cry when he realizes that the woman he thought would always be there has become untouchable. And no matter how many times he reaches out, no matter how many times he wishes he had treated you better, he will have to live with the fact that he made the biggest mistake of his life. But queens, this is not just about him. This is about you. This is about stepping into the power that has always been inside you. You do not need to prove your worth to a man who was too blind to see it. You do not need to beg for love, for attention, for respect. You are not an option. You are not replaceable. You are the prize. And the moment you stop settling for less, the world shifts in your favor. Let him miss you. Let him regret. Let him sit in silence, drowning in the weight of his own choices. Because while he is looking back, you are moving forward. While he is stuck in the past, you are building a future so powerful, so radiant, that he won't even recognize the woman you have become. He doubted you. Now make sure he can't forget what you've become. Queens, write this in the comments and claim it. He laughed when I stayed. Now let him cry when I walk away. Let the world know that you are done waiting, done proving, done settling for less than you deserve. And if this message awakened something inside you, if it reminded you of the strength you have always had, like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are here, working hard to bring you the truth, the lessons, and the fire that will set you free. Because queens do not beg, queens reign. And now, it's your time. Number 8. He gambled with your love. Now, let him lose everything. Have you ever watched a gambler at a table, playing with something valuable, thinking he has all the time in the world? He rolls the dice, takes reckless risks, and bets carelessly, believing luck will always be on his side. But then, in a single moment, everything changes. He places one last bet, thinking he's still in control, and suddenly he loses it all. That's exactly what happened when he gambled with your love. He thought he could take without giving, neglect without consequence, and walk away whenever he pleased. But now, let him learn what it means to lose everything. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." And right now, he's about to feel a loss that will shake him to his core. He thought your love was a game, something he could play with, something he could take for granted. He took risks, tested your patience, pushed your limits, believing you would always be there, no matter how much he disrespected your heart. But love is not a game. Love is not something a man gets to gamble with and expect to win. And now, the price of his arrogance has come due. He assumed he could treat you like an option, like a prize he could toss aside and pick up later. But here's what he never saw coming. You are not the kind of woman who waits to be chosen. You are not a prize at a table, waiting to see if he wants to keep playing. You are the one who walks away, leaving him with nothing but regret. And when the realization hits, when he finally understands that you were the rarest thing he ever had, that's when he will feel the weight of what he has lost. Imagine a man holding a winning lottery ticket in his hands, but instead of claiming it, he crumples it up and throws it away, thinking he'll find another just like it. At first, he feels confident, maybe even smug. He thinks there will be more chances, more wins, more easy ways to get what he wants. But then he watches someone else claim the prize he so carelessly tossed aside. And that is the moment his heart sinks, the moment regret becomes unbearable. That is what will happen when he sees you rising, glowing, moving forward without him. Right now, he believes he has options. He thinks if he walks away, you will chase. He thinks if he disappears, you will wait. But he is wrong. You are not a woman who begs. You are not a woman who pleads for love that should have been given freely. And the moment you step into that truth, the moment you turn your back on him without a second thought, he will feel it. He will feel it in the silence where your voice used to be, in the emptiness where your presence once filled his life. And no matter how many times he looks back, he will never find another you. Queens, this is your moment. The time for waiting is over. The time for proving yourself is over. Now is the time to take back your power, to rise higher than ever before, to let him see the life you build without him, and know, with every fiber of his being, that he lost the best thing he ever had. And when he reaches for you, when he tries to come back, realizing the depth of his mistake, let him find nothing but distance. Let him stand at the table, empty-handed, realizing the game he thought he was playing is already over. Write this in the comments and claim it. He gambled with my love. Now he has lost everything. Queens, let the world know you are done waiting, done chasing, done giving your heart to a man who didn't deserve it. And if this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of your power, like this video and subscribe, because we are here, building an empire of unstoppable women, and together we rise.